So clearly, one of the biggest problems we have in modern society is coming up with names for our characters in video games, or naming our pets, or naming our children. So luckily, the internet has solutions for us where we can go in and we can say, okay, I'm gonna go to this name generator and I want a female, this would be a professor because that's cool. And apparently there's no half elf, half human, which is my favorite. So let's do that. And she's a virtuous leader. I don't care when she was born. None of this matters, and you can kind of come with there. She was born in 1890, and there's all these things you can look at and say, give me some character names. And here we go, just random names. So these are like legit names-ish, Nightshade and stuff like that. There are also places that give you different kinds of names. So there's fantasy name generators, which are kind of fun, and you can say, I'm specifically looking for the name of heavens. There's half-elf names. All right, so I'm looking for half-elf names, and here are some half-elf names, and apparently we can make these nonsense names male or female, whatever that means. I'm not going to say that Safluna is clearly feminine or Salarel is clearly masculine, but you know, it's not my name generator. But as you can tell, these are just kind of nonsense syllables. So that's kind of what we're going to do. Is I think these are kind of fun websites, and the algorithm that goes behind it's kind of neat. So I thought we could do a video on that. And so that's what I've got here that we're going to start. I'm going to make mine a pet name generator because that's the struggle that I am currently facing, is how to name my kitties and puppies. Actually, there's an armadillo that lives in my yard, and the best name that we've come up with is Sir Nicholas Fluttershy. I don't know why he's related to a My Little Pony, but he is. Anyway, so we're going to come up with a name generator for our pet. So this is going to have functions in it. So if you're starting this fresh, I recommend that you start into a current folder that is blank. So just like make a folder just for this. So like I've got my pet name generator right here, and that's good to go. So let's get started. So I'm going to start a Control N to start a new, maybe there. This is a new editor. So I like to start everything with a CLC Clear. So we're going to write a script, and we're going to turn stuff from the script into a function. So I'm going to go ahead and save this as pet name generator, and there. Remember that you can't put any spaces in the name of files in Matlab, so you need to make it all one word or put underscores in between. All right, so starting with a CLC Clear. Now, clearly one of the first things that matters is whether you're naming a cat or a dog or an armadillo. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to create a menu statement, a menu option where you can pick what kind of animal you're naming. And if you don't want to name an animal and you want to name your new, maybe you collect antique pirate chests and you want to name them, then whatever you want to do is fine, but it's just having fun with it. So if you remember how to do this, that's great from some of the other videos. If not, you know, we'll just walk you through it. So let's say I want to pick some animals. So I'm going to create a menu. So I'm going to call mine animal choice. Now, it doesn't have to be called animal choice. It's just something that I choose to do. I could call it potato head, and it'll still work as long as I always refer to it as potato head. But I'm going to go animal choice because I want job security. If someone else can read my code, then that's job security. I want promotion ability, and if somebody can read my code, then I might get promoted one day. So, animal choice. Menu. What are you naming? And I'm going to say I'm going to name a armadillo. What did I do wrong? Oh, cat. Armadillo. What else could I name? I could name a cat, or I could name a, no, I'm just going to name a dog or an armadillo or a cat, because why would you want to name anything else? Now, we always, every time we write code, we always want to save it and test it. So remember that little asterisk means it hasn't been saved. So save it, and then I can Control Enter to test it, and it'll say off my screen, you can't see. There we go, now you can see it. So what are you naming? Armadillo, cat. So if I click armadillo, it says animal choice is 1. If I run it again and say cat, animal choice is 2. If I run it again and hit the X box up here, it says animal choice is 0. So now that we know how that works, I can go ahead and suppress the output, and I'm ready to do the next step. So basically what I want to do is, if you kind of remember the website where they just made up a whole bunch of syllables, that's kind of what I want to do, because why not? So if we're trying to do this, I'm going to come up with some syllables, and I'm going to call them like bug with 2 G's. Now don't type this, okay? Just watch, because I'm going to have to erase it because it's wrong, but I'm just showing you why it's wrong. So I'm going to go bug and tuffle and w and boo. All right, so these are the syllables that I'm going to use. And so now I'm going to name, actually I'm tired of doing that. So, all right, so that's not helpful. I'm going to go ahead and comment this out just for a second so I can just keep running this. So here's the problem is, if I run it like this, see how all the syllables go together, which makes sense because remember Matlab is matrix laboratory. I'm putting in a matrix that's a 1 by 4, concatenating it with a 1 by 6, and then a 1 by 3, 3, and then a 1 by 2. So it's all going together. I'm like, okay, well I can fix this. I'll just make them all their own like rows, right? Because clearly that would work. So I'm gonna make them, I don't really need that there, but I'm gonna make them all their own rows, which seems like that should work, except now I have a problem with the name generator. It says the dimensions of the matrices are not consistent. Okay, so that just means that these aren't the same length. So if I want to make them the same length, that sounds good, okay. But now if I want to combine, say, bug and woo, so I could say, let's say that my name is going to be, I'm going to concatenate syllables, the first syllable, and then the third syllable, and this really isn't going to work. So that's just going to give me B and W. Okay, well that's not what I meant. What I really meant is the first thing, first row, all columns, third row, all columns. And now it's put all these extra spaces in there, and that's not what I want. Okay, well, what I really mean is 1, but I only want the first 4, and 3, but I only want the first 3, and wait, 1 to 4, oh my goodness. See, this is just not the way I want to do this. This is kind of a mess. So that took a lot of effort, and it's not really good. And then if it turns out I want to add another syllable called bubblegum, now I've got to go in here and I've got to add the spaces for all this. So this is an absolute disaster. This is not how I want to live my life. Okay, so let's delete all that. Okay, so that's not going to work. Now it turns out that there is another thing that you can do in Matlab, and there's different kinds of data types. So instead of using a matrix, what I want to do is I'm going to use, what do we call it? It's basically cells. A cell array. So instead of using square brackets, I'm going to use curly braces. And now I'm going to do bug and kind of the same thing, t and b and ips and I don't know, I'm just making up stuff. All right. These are gonna be terrible. Oh, and then I tried to, you see what happened when I tried to square bracket the end? It like yelled at me and turned it red, so I need to curly brace the end. Okay, so now when I do it, you see that these show up like this. This is a cell array. It's an array of cells, much like Excel. So if you've ever thought Excel, well, I guess that's how they teamed it, but the cell is meaning for like a cell because it's a cell array. So like if I'm in Excel, I can totally put like bug here, and I can put woo here, and I can put this here, and it's totally fine, and you never even thought about the fact that these aren't all the same length, and you were able to just do that. Well, that's because those are cell arrays. So Excel is basically a matrix of cell arrays, or a matrix of cells, or yeah, multiple cell arrays. So we can do all of this together. So you actually have experience with this, whether you realize it or not. All right. Now, if I want to actually access these, I could say syllables. Now, if I try to do with parentheses, it's going to come back with the whole thing bug, but it's going to be in these little braces, and I don't really want that. So instead of using, instead of using the parentheses, I'm going to go ahead and use the curly braces, and then it returns just the syllable without any, whatever you have it, stuff, without any extra stuff, without the curly braces. So, like if I wanted to make a name of the first syllable and the second syllable, then I could create the name bug2, just like that. Okay, so I would use the square brackets to concatenate the string, but then I'd use the curly braces to access what's in the curly braces up here. Okay, so this is fun. So what we want to do now is, instead of manually putting in these syllables, what we want to do is we want to kind of figure out, well, okay, we don't want all the names to sound exactly the same, so let's kind of use a random number of syllables. Okay, so if we're doing a random number of syllables, we could say, all right, if you remember how to randomly generate a number from, say, 1, 2, 3, maybe we want to have 3 syllables names. So see if you remember how to do that. Okay, so this many syllables, I'm gonna go rand I, so that's any number from 1 to whatever I put in there. So random number from 1 to 3. All right. Now I can go ahead and I can suppress this because I know it's going to work. And while I'm here, let me go ahead and add some more syllables. I'm going to put something with an apostrophe in it because that's how you know you're cool. You have a cool apostrophe in your name. Now I'm going to have a random capital letter in my name because why not? And no, not that. And then I'm going to put a dash in that name. And I don't know, just stuff. I'm always afraid I'm going to accidentally generate something really inappropriate. So if something pops up that's not safe for work, I didn't do it on purpose. Okay, so we are going to have 3 syllables in our name. So we want to do things a specific number of times. So we're going to use a loop. We're either going to use a while loop or a for loop. But since we know in advance that we're going to run this exactly however many times this ends up being, so either 3, 1, 3, 2, so however many times that ends up being, that's the exact number of times. So we're going to use a for loop. So I'm going to set up my for loop for, you know, whatever, doesn't matter. Going from 1 to this many syllables, and make sure you end your for loop. So right now nothing's happening. So as a reminder, if I was going to do this, it's just going to display hi as many times as that syllables is. So there's 3 highs, there's 3 highs, 2, there's 2 highs, 1, there's 1 high. That's convenient. Thank you. All right, so we're going to generate based on a certain number of syllables. All right, so I'm actually going to generate my a first name. So first of all, I want to pick this one. So I want to randomly pick one of these syllables. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So think about it, rather than having to count this out, because maybe you have a different number, do you remember how to figure out how many entries we have in something like this? It would be, so I want to pick from 1 to however many there is. So that would be 1 to the length of syllables. If you're not sure, syllables, see, that doesn't look like it's right, but that's okay. So let's try it. Oh, that's unfortunate. There we go. So I would have had the same thing over and over again. So I'm going to pick this one, 1, 3, 1. Now, if you want to make sure that this is right, you can just come down here and say length of syllables. That's going to give me 9. So I have 9 syllables for sure. So that's good. But if I run this, it's going to, here, I'm going to do format so you can see what I'm doing. But from here, you're going to say, all right, it's going to pick the 3rd, the 9th, and then the 1st. And then if I run it again, it's going to do the 4th and the 7th. Because remember, this number is changing from 1 to 3. If you want to make 4 syllables, you can totally do that. You can have like these super awesome armadillo names, and that's totally amazing. Okay, so now that I've got this put together, what I want to do is I want to actually figure out, so I'm going to pick the 4th or 5th one. So I've got that working, so I can, well, I won't suppress it yet. Okay, so I can say my new syllable, and if you can't spell syllables, stop trying to. So what I'm gonna do is, remember, I'm gonna pull from syllables, specifically whatever this one is. Now, remember, I'm not using square brackets, I'm not using parentheses, I'm using the curly braces. So I'm going to specifically pick this one from syllables. All right, so you can see, I'm going to pick the 2nd one, and then the 2nd one, the 5th one that got me the 5th one, the 5th one that got me the 5th one again. All right, so this is a good time to pause the video and make sure that you're doing everything right, okay? So this is a really, really good time to pause the video and, you know, kind of take stock and make sure you're kind of completely set up with what we're doing here. Okay, so let's assume now that you've got everything going. All right, so what we'd like to do is we'd like to go ahead and create my name by putting these syllables together. So essentially what I'm going to do is no matter what my first name is, I would like it to be whatever my current first name is plus my new syllable. Okay, so does that make sense? So if my name is, you know, Bug, then my name would be Bug2, and then Bug2 Eki, and then Bug2 Eki Eki. Kind of makes sense? Okay. Now the thing is, if I try and run this, it's going to yell at me. If I look at Y, it's going to say it's undefined because my first name hasn't been defined. And you're like, but that's not fair because I've defined it right here, except that, well, I've defined it in terms of its previous self, which means that I haven't actually defined it at all. So basically what that means is I have to give it an initial value. And this is something that comes up a lot in for loops and while loops where it doesn't work or it doesn't work correctly because you thought you gave it initial value or you gave it initial value that turned out to be wrong. So what we need to do is we need to say first name and give it just a blank initial value. So if you see how that works, what it's going to do is the first name is going to be blank. I'm going to pick the third one. So now my first name here is going to be, let me suppress these so you can see it a little bit better. So I guess I only picked one syllable, so it went from blank to 2. And then it went from blank to ru to ips, so now my name is Ruips. And then blue Joe, don't try to pronounce these. At some point it's just gonna get weird. Ruru Eki. I'm unhappy. I feel like I need some like normal things that are easier to pronounce, like boot. I don't know if that's gonna help at all. There we go. Maybe I also just don't like the fact that there's only 3. I don't know. You can make it more than 3 if you want. Yeah, quo woot. That's not really that helpful either. But you know what? Some of those on that website were pretty ridiculous too. All right. But in any case, you're going to see the name be created over time. Okay, so I can go ahead and suppress this because I know it's working, and suppress this because I know it's working. Now, if you like to have the top thingy in the corner be green, that's just not going to happen on this one. If you look at the error message or the warning message, it says the variable appears to change size on every loop iteration. Consider pre-allocating for speed. That just means that every time it adds a new syllable, it has to go find new memory, which could theoretically slow it down, but we don't know how long the name's going to be until we run the code, so there's really not a whole lot we could do other than pre-allocate a really, really long space and then concatenate. It's just not worth it, so we're just going to leave that there, okay? So we've got a name. So if I just want to display the name, I can. Oh, that's great. So my name is Y. Okay, and you know, this is just not desperately excited about that Y. So what if I just make it an apostrophe? All right, so those are really not impressive names. I feel like I need to fix this. I'll fix it later. Okay. So, but we really haven't taken into account whether or not we're naming an armadillo or whether or not we're naming a cat. And of course this matters. So right now what you should have is you should have a name generated, except I stopped displaying it. So I have a name of my cat is Wootbug and the name of my armadillo is Towoot. All right, which is fine. Except in real life, we clearly named armadillo and cats different things based on who they are. So what we're going to do is we're going to come up with different name endings. So if we've chosen, so set up a, let's do this one. Set up an if statement to do, I guess you could do an if statement. Let's do a menu statement instead. Set up a switch case to do something if an armadillo is chosen, cat, etc. All right, so we're just going to set up a switch case. So, yay. So if you remember how to do switch case statements, remember we're going to switch on the variable. So we're not switching on menu, we're not switching on armadillo, we're not switching on cat, we're switching on what the animal choice is, okay? So we're going to switch on the animal choice. Go ahead and type end on your switch statement just so that you know exactly where that ends. So I'm going to switch on animal choice and then hit end. All right. So remember, in a switch case, we've got switch. Now in the case of 1, because remember the animal choice is either giving us a 1, a 2, or a 0. So in the case 1, this is going to be an armadillo. In the case 2, this is going to be kitty stuff. And you might have something different, and you might have a 3rd case or a 4th case. I just have 4th case that says nobody's playing, so sad. Okay. All right. So what we want to do is we want to come up with some last initials, or like name endings. So clearly, if you're an armadillo, your name could totally be Tuwoot, except, you know, you're going to have kind of like a, I don't know what armadillos eat now that you, okay, so apparently armadillos eat beetles and worms. So let's, how, I guess. All right, so the name endings for my armadillo, you know, you can tell that somebody's an armadillo because their name ends in a other, I hate to use bug, wormy, or I already forgot, invertebrate. That's not a very good, inverti. Okay, so that could be the name ending for a armadillo. I'm not very good at this. Beetles, the beets. All right, so there we go. So potential name endings for an armadillo might be wormy, inverti, or beets. Clearly, kitties are a lot easier. Name endings for kitties might include snugs, or I was going to say fester. I'm not really sure why. What else do kitties do? They're snuggle bunnies. I already said that. Snugs. They like to sleep. Sleeps. Or fuzzy. All right. All right. So those are potential name endings. Now, if you've chosen not to play, I can give you name endings like so sads. I don't know what I want to. Yeah, I'll just stick with so sads. So sads. All right, so that's the only name ending for that guy. Now, these don't have to have the same number of elements, so in fact, I'm going to do this a little bit different just so that you know that they don't have to. Purrs. There we go. All right. So these are potential name endings for the different animals. Okay? So now what we want to do is we want to pick a name ending for the first name. So what you're going to need to do is you're going to need to generate a random integer from 1 to however many names there are. I can't spell. And then append, then figure out what syllable that is, and then append the name ending to the first name. So to kind of help you see if you're learning, I guess, I would pause this video and see how much of this you can kind of do independently. And if you can't, that's fine. You can just keep going. But you know, as you're kind of playing along, pause the video and see how you're doing. All right, so we'll pretend you did that. So we want to randomly generate an integer from 1 to however many names there are. And actually, this is going to be very similar to what we had up here. So we're going to, again, we can say pick this one, randi, and length. Now, instead of getting the length of syllables, we're going to get the length of name endings. Now, what's kind of cool about this is because we've used the same word or the same variable for name endings, this code can work for all 3 cases. So, for example, we had done this as armadillo endings, kitty endings, and nobody endings. We would have to have a different variable for each one of these cases. But because we did name them all the same the first time, we can actually use the same code for all 3 cases, which is kind of the point. And I'm going to continue to pattern match my new syllable. Now, instead of pulling from the syllables array, I'm going to pull from the name endings array. And again, using curly braces, pick this one, curly braces, and I guess I'm doing that. So right now I've picked beets for my armadillo, and I've picked sleeps for my cat, and I've picked so sads for no one. Now what's left is to append the first name. And now if I'm going to name an armadillo, his name is Kuru Beats. And if I name a kitty cat, her name is Ipsuku Sleeps. And if I choose not to do it, my name is Blue Sosats. Okay. So assuming I like all that and it's all working, I can go ahead and I can suppress basically everything. Actually, I don't want to display anything. I'm just going to do this. Okay, so again, armadillo, there's my name, and kitty cat, there's my name. Now, you might be slightly irritated, and rightfully so, because these names do not start with a capital letter. So the problem is I can't make these all capital, because if I make these all capital, don't do this. But if I make these all capital, I'm not going to do all of them either. Then whenever I run it, I've got these random capitals, and I know I did some of them on purpose, but I don't want to do all of them on purpose. And it doesn't help if I pick something that doesn't have any capitals in it. So what I need to do is I actually need to change the first letter of first name to an uppercase letter. So take a minute, see if you can kind of play around and figure out exactly how to do that. Pretend you did that. So if you are kind of curious of how to do this, remember that if you type help, you can get a list of all the different things that you've got in here. So there's, elementary functions, polynomial functions, and stuff like that. But I'm specifically going to look for things that have to do with characters. Okay, so if I look, here's strFun, and that's characters, arrays, and strings. So if I click strFun, that's going to give me a list of everything that I can do with strings. And if I kind of scroll around, eventually I might find what I'm looking for. Maybe, of course. All right. So in fact, eventually I will see something here that says convert the string to the uppercase. All right, you're like, sweet, so I'm going to do that. So I'm going to recopy first name as an uppercase version of first name. Like, sweet, so I'm gonna run it. There's my armadillo, and now that's my name. So now my name just got very angry. So clearly that's not what I want to do. So what I really want to do is I just want to fix the first syllable, or not the first syllable, the first letter of this name to be uppercase, right? So actually what I want to do is, instead of converting the entire thing to uppercase, I just want to convert the first character to uppercase. Okay, so to kind of make that clear, I'm going to take the first character of the first name, I'm going to convert it to upper, and I'm going to rewrite the first character of first name as its uppercase version. And there we go. So it goes from Bug Blue Sleeps to Bug Blue Sleeps. All right, happy? Woo, that was fun. Okay, now, as with all things, once we get code that we like, let's go ahead and we're going to throw this into a function. So although this seems like quite the obnoxious thing to do, I'm going to take everything from line 6 all the way down, hit cut, and paste. Okay? So now this is the only thing that should be over here, and this one over here should be everything else in our script. So instead of this being something that's going to be run by a script, we're going to run it by a function. So take a minute and see if you can figure out what would be the input and the output of this function. So it's a little annoying because we have to go output equals blah, 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 and then the input's there. So we actually have to think about what the output is first. So what would the output be of this function? So the output of the function would be the first name, right? That's what we're trying to get out of the function. I'll leave those the way they are for the moment. So the output is going to be the first name. And we can call this function name first name generator. And the input of the function, so think about what this code needs to run. So whenever we're over here, we use this menu statement to get the animal choice. So if we come over here and we look, animal choice is being used here, but we don't actually define it here. That means that animal choice has to be the input of the function. All right, So the output is the first name, animal choice is the input, and the name of the function is first name generator. So if I hit save, it should automatically try to save my function as first name generator. And there we go, first name generator. Okay, so now I can go, remember I don't have to call it first name. And the input is animal choice. So now if I run this, what animal are you naming? There we go. And now it lists it 3 times, which is unfortunate. And first time it calls it first name, and then calls it blah. All right, this is important. Because it's calling it first name and first name, look, there isn't even a first name in my workspace. If I go over to my first name generator and I scroll down, I see that these are unsuppressed. If I suppress them, which is really what you should do in generators or in functions, unless the point of the function is to print something, you should never have any visible output to the screen, nothing like displayed to the screen from your function. But if I go ahead and I suppress those, and then I run this again, there, blah, this name of my new kitty cat is Joe QQ Sleeps. All right? Okay, so that was super fun. All right, so I'm gonna do, so that's kind of really all you need for this. I'm gonna do another one where we can randomly generate some pictures to go, not randomly generate pictures, but randomly choose from some pictures to show with our animal, but this should be enough to kind of get you started.